Hi, welcome to Bottega Banter. My name's Liesl. I'm the studio manager here at Bottega in Portland. And today I'm going to be showing you a sweet little leaf painting. I'm going to go through little supplies here. What we need essential for our day is a little bit of paint. We're using acrylic. It dries fast. It's nice for a little easy, quick painting in the day. A little water cup for our wastewater. And then we have 3 brushes. Doesn't really matter much, but we've got a coverage brush, a little texture brush, and our little detail brush. You also want a rag to keep your brushes nice and tidy, and of course the essential beer to help us through the painting. So today I'm going to start off just with the first little easy layer. Get your little jitters out if you haven't painted in a while. So I'm going to start with my biggest brush. Give it a little tap in my cup to wet it, a little toast on the side so it's not too wet. And then I'm just going to cover my whole canvas in just white paint. No specific brush strokes here. Just get it a nice, full coverage, nice and easy. If you feel a little fancy, get a little twist in there. Just a good, even layer. Now, after we finish that layer, we'll give our brush a good wash. Make sure it's nice and clean. We don't want to leave any paint in there to ruin it for later, so give it a good tug through that rag. And then you're going to let that layer dry and drink more of your beer.
Watching paint dry.
Right? Now that our background layer is dry, I'm going to start building up my little layers here, just a little guide. So I want to start with a gray for the stem of my little leaf section. I'm going to switch to my medium brush here. It's going to mix the paints a little bit better for me. So again, I want to give it a little wake up in the cup. Get it wet, but not too wet. And then I'm going to mix a gray. And gray, if you didn't know, is a big scoop of white. And because we want a light gray, I'm just going to do a little bit of black there. But I find that gray by itself is kind of boring, so I'm going to add just a smidge of purple in there too. Now, when I go to paint, I'm going to still use this medium brush, but I don't want a lot of paint on there, so I'm going to kind of flatten it off in my paint pile to get like a really nice skinny edge. And then I'm going to come up to my canvas, and I want to go a little bit further down than where I want my leaf to be. I'm thinking about my top leaf being around here. I'm going to start my stem about there. Get my little arm in here. And I'm going to go very lightly on the canvas. Now, part of the reason we wanted this to be dry is so that we can give our hand a little rest. When you're trying to do very careful motions, it's nice to be connected to the canvas so you have a really steady line if you feel like you don't have a steady enough hand. So I'm going to kind of eyeball where I think it's going to look good and pretty, put a nice little delicate touch, and then just pull a line down in a bit of a curve. Now as I go, I gave a little bit more pressure to make it a little bit wider in there, but I want to kind of crisp it up a little bit. So I'm going to wash off my medium brush, give it a good clean, and switch to my baby brush. Wet but not too wet. And then I'm going to crisp up that top edge, again resting my hand on the canvas, doing very light little touches. Ooh, shaky. Oh, there we go. Make sure your canvas is stable, guys. Giving a little bit of a light little flick in here to try to just really get a nice tiny little edge on the tip of my stem. Softening up any maybe little paint blobs that I have. But remember, nature is a little chaotic, so if you have some messes, it works for it. And then I'm going to beef up a little bit of my bottom stem down here, but I want to make it a bit darker. So I'm going to add a little bit of black to my pile, kind of have it be a loose little swirl, because I don't want it fully mixed. And then I'm going to just darken up the bottom stem a little bit. Do a couple little dashes to make it look like it's kind of a chunky blend there. and then wash my baby brush off. And I'm gonna start making the green for my leaves in here. The green that I want for the base of the leaves is going to be kind of a nice minty green, a soft green, and then we'll add other colors to beef it up and add little highlights. So we're gonna start, again, back to our medium brush, taking a big scoop of white there, choosing a little pile to mix for ourselves. I'm gonna do about maybe half as much green for myself, and then I'm gonna add a little touch of blue, almost like on the little minty turquoise side there. Now you can use whatever colors you want. If you have a favorite green shade, you use it. Ooh, you can cut that out. It's the beer! We'll take a little beer break. Mm-hmm. That'll help me mix. And again, I want to have not a ton of paint on my brush. I'm kind of flattening it off. And I'm going to start from the top. And I'm going to do as much as I can with the big brush, and then I can use my baby brush to sort of soften things up, crisp details up. And again, I'm going to do kind of a light little texture at the top, a little bit of a pressure to keep a clean line. And I'm going to do just that generic leaf shape, like a skinny almond, and just fill in my leaves. Now, because this is nature, and it's a little chaotic, like we said before, I want to try to make them all a little bit different, seen at different angles. Maybe they cluster a little bit differently in some ways. Kind of let them have different shapes, different characters. Maybe they cluster together a little bit more. Maybe they're going to overlap as we go. Just letting it feel it out the way down. Now, if that bigger brush is hard for you, you can use a smaller brush. A lot of painting is about finding the tools that work for you. So if you feel like you have a hard time with the bigger brush, switch to a smaller brush, use many brushes. It's all about finding the process that feels good in your hand. When I do use smaller brushes, it is going to take more time. So just remember to be patient, keep drinking your drinks, and relaxing as you go. So now that I've put my layout of my leaves, before I switch to another color, I am going to come in with just the baby brush and crisp up any edges that I feel like are rough or loose, anything I might need to tidy up. Again, I'm not going to be too concerned because this is nature. Everything's going to have wiggles and bumps that aren't planned, just as nature intended. Now that we finished that step with that color, I'm going to wash my brushes off, make sure they're nice and clean because I don't want that green coming into the next color that I mix. And take a drink. Now I'm going to mix two different greens here. I'm going to make a dark green and a lighter green. You may already have those paints made like in just tubes, so you can just choose colors that you like. But because I'm working with just a basic palette here, I'm going to make a darker green by using some green, some blue, and some purple, just to make kind of a lush tone here. Now keep in mind that when you mix paint, it's a lot like when you cook with salts and spices, a little bit at a time to taste. So if you feel like that green's not for you, just add a little bit more green, a little bit more blue until you find a color that you like. So after I have my dark green, I'm going to wash my brush out, give it a nice clean, and then make a brighter, more lush, on the opposite tone, kind of tropical green, by taking a scoop of that regular green and adding a bit of yellow to it to make it nice and bright and happy. And then I'm going to wash my medium brush and go back to my baby brush. That medium brush is going to be really good for mixing. The baby brush gets you nowhere on the mixing end of things. So I'm going to start with kind of my shadowy tones here and just work my way down because the leaves up at the top are going to be drier and I want to have a little bit of that paint dried before I start adding these other tones. So I'm going to go again kind of through my leaf passes here. Now, because I've got this green paint, I'm going to put my pinky out to stabilize rather than my palm, just so I'm still on that same secure level. Just bringing in some swishes of the dark, letting it kind of roughly blend in with little dashes of my brush. And then I'm not even going to wash it out. I'm going to come in with my light green that I made and just do like little flicks on the top of the little leaf there, bring some in to kind of bring in that little shady tone there. And I'm going to do that all the way down our stem of leaves. Just little dashes. You'll find that the different pressure you use will give you different motions. So if I push down hard on my brush, it'll give me a very fat stroke. And if I do just little flicks, you can kind of see better over here, it will give me like softer little motions. So play around with the pressure of your brush, how lightly you touch the canvas. And you can always go back to the medium tone. So if I got a little too crazy with one color, I can come back into my original leaf color and just blend it back in. And we'll work our way down. Now I'm going to let this layer dry a little bit, but sometimes you might also have areas where you realize that you may have some mistakes and things like that. So if you're the kind of person that has a hard time just sitting and drinking, you can take a little bit of white paint and just cover up any blobs that you might have not liked, do a little careful control work in there. But really, I recommend nature being nature, and you get to sit back and relax and drink a little bit while that first layer dries. So now that that's dried a little bit, it's okay if it's a little tacky. We can bring in a couple little colors for popping. So because there's a bit more of a tropical plant here, I can bring in like a little bit of yellow and add a little color into the leaves and just brighten them up. Like especially where I have a layer where two leaves may cross over, a little yellow is really going to help separate where those two leaves overlie. So I'm going to do a little bit of yellow in there. And then I also like adding a little bit of pink to my plants. I think it's a good contrast, a little good pop of color. So even though I said that baby brush isn't good for mixing, now you can because we're not trying to use a whole lot of it. So I'll just take a little bit of white and a tiny bit of red, swirl those together. But I want it to be more of a bright pink and less of a pastel pink, so I'm going to add a smidge of yellow to it. Yellow kind of helps those colors stay bright and happy and away from the pastels. So once I have a nice happy pink, I can bring a little bit of that. Now I'm just really quickly dashing it into my leaves here. I'm not blending it in, I'm not brushing a lot, because if I brush a lot, I'll just all smear together and look kind of brown. So I'm just trying to like plop the paint on and move on. I'm laying it and I'm leaving it. And that's our little leaf painting. Shouldn't take you much more than a beer's worth of your day, or if a wine glass too, that works as well. But that's how you make a happy little leaf painting. Join us again next week, and we'll have some more tips and tricks for you and a different style of painting and a different artist for you. But thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions, let us know. Down the hatchet.